Now it's time for my take. They say a week is a long time in politics, and ain't that the truth? Last episode, Trump's tariffs had just dropped. Chaos had ensued. World leaders, and plenty of pundits in America, were panicking loudly. Fast forward to now, and, as predicted right here, just 7 days ago, for the most part, all is well again in the world, with the exception, of course, of China. The nation that retaliated now finds itself in an unenviable position. Massive tariffs and a war of words. I suspect they won't win. Now, I, for one, am ecstatic that this has occurred, for a few reasons, but one in particular. It has placed the Chinese Communist Party and the rising/existing threat it poses firmly back where it belongs, in the spotlight. The sleeping giant thrives under the radar. And with war in Europe and the Middle East, it's fair to say most have taken their eye off the greatest danger facing Western civilization in a very long time. The point I'd make, though, is that despite a lack of focus from so many around the globe, it's not as if President Xi Jinping has been hiding who he is and what he wants. It's there for all to see. He's desperate to take Taiwan. He's said that multiple times. It would be ridiculous not to believe him. Now, that might seem like a faraway issue to many on the other side of the world. Not our battle, they might think. Unfortunately, they'd be wrong. It would likely spark World War III. China has been robustly building its military capabilities for decades now, whilst the most powerful nation in the world, America, has been depleting theirs. 4 years under Biden, and the US military became more concerned with DEI, pronouns, and woke than war. Don't for a second think the CCP hasn't monitored this in greater detail than we could even imagine. They have, and more. Former Secretary of the Air Force Frank Kendall says, and I quote, "I've been closely watching the evolution of China's military for 15 years. China is not a future threat. China is a threat today." He's spot on. And anyone who thinks that China's ambition ends with Taiwan is either completely naive or they're lying. President Trump was one of the first world leaders to really take this seriously, thanks in part to people like Elbridge Colby, one of the architects of his national security strategy during his first term in office. In my opinion, Colby's insights in this space are second to none, and not listening to him would be a grave error for which we will all pay a price. As Donald Trump said this week, Xi Jinping is a very smart man. Now, I'd add to that, he also has a very healthy ego, like most in his position. He desperately craves a legacy that will live well beyond he does. How far that goes, and how far he'd go to achieve it, well, only he knows. But again, listen to him. He told Russia's Vladimir Putin, and I quote, "Right now there are changes, the likes of which we haven't seen for 100 years. And we are the ones driving these changes together." It's not rocket science. They want a new world order, and democracies don't feature anywhere near the top. Notice the cozying up in recent times of China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. Not necessarily nations that share the values of America and its allies. This trade war or economic battle, call it whatever you will, is so much more than just that. It's a long overdue rebuke to a regime who wants to replace the United States as top dog. America was in part playing along nicely despite the very obvious adversarial nature of the CCP. In some ways, the US has been helping China build itself up to a strength that many believe would be capable of defeating the US in a war right now. Makes no sense. New Defence Sec Pete Hegseth is looking to reverse the rot, but that will take time. Retired US General Jack Keane said in 2022 that China already had a military advantage, not just over the US, but its allies too. That's terrifying. More planes, ships, and offensive/defensive missiles. And this was 3 years ago he said it. They haven't slowed down. In fact, if anything, they've upped the ante. And not just at home either. Look at where they are building ports and infrastructure. Note these strategic locations. Nothing is random nor by chance. The world needs to wake up and start to stand up to a nation that has used its size and strength to bully others into submission for far too long now. And they've done it, almost arrogantly, right under the West's nose. And why wouldn't they, to be honest? When America is weak, which it was under Biden, it's ripe for the picking. Who could blame Xi Jinping for wanting to take advantage of that? Trump promised to restore America as the superpower it once was. And this is all part of fulfilling that promise. It may not always be obvious to those not particularly engaged in the geopolitical goings-on around the world, but there's a reason you are allowed to care not overly much about it. It's a privilege afforded to those who live in countries which are democratic, free, and prosperous. But we must never, ever forget why. The blood of many brave men and women was spilled for this blessed existence. So any measures taken, like what we've seen from the Trump administration this week, to try and claw back some power, some ground, isn't about petty politics or the American president's ego, as healthy as it might be. It's about ensuring another generation doesn't have to die to protect what we have right now. It's to avoid all-out war. So yes, there is global uncertainty regarding tariffs and plenty are nervous. But if this reset goes some way to levelling out the playing field when it comes to China, not just from an economic perspective, but militarily, we know how combined they are, then this is a win. And regardless of what happens next, it's a clear message to our biggest adversary that there's a new chief in town, and the days of weakness and submission are over.